I have joined you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, great, great, great. Can you see me? Oh,
Oh no, no sir.
there we go.
Craig, do we want to switch over to the conclave then?
There we go.
For sure. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Well, the big news, the absolute big news is that I finished the freaking romance book. Finally, got done with the rewrite. I want to thank everybody in the Garden Society who's been helping me out with that. The comments were fascinating. I had to explain some of the structural issues with romance novels in particular, because there is some overlap between romance novel enthusiasts who tend to be about 80% female and fantasy, which tends to be about 60% male in terms of readership. This book is intended to be a new entry point into the Spellmonger series for new fans who might be intimidated about having a series that long ahead of them. Hopefully, it's the kind of book that will engage them and convince them to go ahead and take a crack at either the first Spellmonger book or the first Hawkmaiden book to get Dara's backstory. Or at least part of it. And I think overall, I'm extremely pleased with the result, even though there were some stumbles here and there along the way, and some of my beta readers, I guess, second guessed what I was doing and where I was going with it. I did not on purpose tell them all that much about where the story was going until they actually read it, so that I could get a candid and impartial response. And that worked out great, actually. And it was fascinating looking at the different perspectives of my beta readers and my editor, Emily, based on what parts of the story they were most engaged by. It settled out about where I thought it would, and I'm hoping, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hoping we have resolved the Dara issue going forward by the end of this book. She can be Dara the Bridezilla. There you go.
Oh.
My next book, which I have already started on because it is due April 1st, which means I have 2 months to write and rewrite this entire book, which means starting February 1st, I will be cranking a chapter a day, at least minimum, in order to hit my deadline. And that's fine. I can hold that pace. And I think this next book, The Golden Goblin, will actually be a lot easier. The Dara book, Talon and Flame, it ended up being 7 chapters longer than I had originally intended because, as I've mentioned before, women have more words, a lot more words. They have words, a lot of words, and feelings and words. And so when you're getting into a romance, there's a lot of introspection, back and forth between different parts of yourself, and sudden realizations and epiphanies and all that sort of thing. And that's exhausting, actually, to relate. But I think I accomplished what I set out to do with that. With the Right, it is. It is. There are some decent bits of action in there, and I think we get to see Dara. We don't see her fighting from Hawkback, but apart from that, she does actually some rather dangerous and impetuous things here and there. Her bravery is certainly not at issue. I'll just leave it at that. With the Golden Goblin, we're going back to a straight up Tyndall and Rondell joint. This is harkens back to Knights Magi and the other stories that they've appeared in together, Shadow Mage. And this is kind of, I guess, the next iteration of their relationship now that they are married men, relatively successful and moving on with their lives. And they basically get handed this mission by Menelin. Airing. Hey, yeah. As a matter of fact, we're actually supposed to be getting snow, which will be the second snow of the season. And I know that doesn't seem like a big deal for all of you people in the Great White North, but down here you have snow and everything shuts down, apparently including the internet every now and then. But back to Golden Goblin. This is going to be much more of a straight up adventure story, which I think we'll see it kept shorter. The cool thing about it is I'm roughly basing it on the
I'll finish you later. I took some more. I want to take some more.
KT, your mic's active.
Basically, I'm patterning it roughly on Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. And I'm encouraged by the fact that Heart of Darkness was originally a novella. And so hopefully we can keep it fairly within a reasonable amount of length. I'm really trying to stick to about 35 chapters this time around, which is what the Dara book was originally plotted for, but it just doesn't work out that way. So I should be able to get it done in 2 months and get it turned in to Podium on time. This one will be voiced by John Lee, which is why I have such a tight deadline, simply because you have to schedule John Lee fairly far in advance to make sure that you're going to be able to get his time, and so that kind of necessitated this inflexible deadline. We're already on the schedule. Beyond that is book 18, which I do not have a due date for yet, and therefore I don't have a publication date for. More than likely, it will be out towards the beginning of next year, which will be odd because this will be the first calendar year that I probably won't be having a regular series come out. So, and that's just how the calendar fell this time. But book 18 will be Sea Mage, and we will be back in Menelin's voice for that, and Menelin's perspective. And he will be continuing his issues with Faris.
Breaking down. Okay.
And not just Faris, but beyond Faris to extending to the Vundel and to the Alcalan. And of course, we've got an enemy fleet bearing down on Faris. So it's going to be a lot of fun to cram all of that into one big novel. But I'm looking forward to it. I've already got a lot of notes written down by it. We're going to have a lot of nice revelations. And I think that we're going to have a... In any case, I think Golden Goblin and Sea Mage are both going to be a lot of fun. They certainly won't be filler. As a matter of fact, we're going to learn some shocking I say shocking things in Golden Goblin that will very much set the stage for what happens in Sea Mage.
So no big reveal on the Valley folk yet, huh?
Oh no, not yet, not yet. I'm saving them because again, the Valley folk. Once we get into that, I've got about at least a 40% chance of getting canceled. So I'm just.
Oh no.
Well, I'm just
I
saying.
want to make sure we're well and thoroughly into the series before I spring that on y'all because
It can't be worse than like the early goblin rituals during the invasions and
well,
the soup.
they're let's put it this way, they're bad, but they're bad in a way that we haven't really appreciated before. And it's not their fault that they're bad is the other thing.
So animalistic.
Can't even go there. They're actually quite sophisticated, which makes it all the worse in some ways. So, yeah, I just got to hold out and resist the temptation from spoiling it until we get there because it's going to be a big shock and a big reveal. And Hayden and I, in discussing the strain of Ruderall novels that he wants to do, he's going to kind of introduce the Winshari perspective of the Valley folk. He is the Winshari are the closest human or other human civilization, normal human civilization, to the Valley people. And they have had the longest history with them and have a slightly better understanding. But even the Winshari, who are some of the most toughest, badass war magi on the planet, really just don't want to mess with the Valley folk. Right. Yeah. We're looking forward to the bears. Winchar has a lot of bears, and Hayden is particularly fond of bears. So we're going to see some bears.
Can we discuss the perspective real quick that 20-something books is not
I'm trying to come up with something really cool like Bear Maiden or something like that that we can use as a title. But I also figured out something very important about the Valley folk just a couple of days ago as I was finishing up the romance novel and thinking ahead at what I'm going to do in the Golden Goblin. And I came up with a key point, which I think is going to really cinch the Valley folk as a culture and give a little more rational explanation for why they do what they do and how their culture has evolved. No, they are not. They are not, as you will learn, and I'll be willing to give you all this much. They are, and I can't even call them a failed experiment because the goal of the experiment was to create a subgenome of human being that was adapted to Kalidor. Basically take some of the genetic enhancements that humanity, some of the colonists already had, and find a way to adapt humanity to the planet as much as they were adapting the planet to humanity. Kind of a terraforming in reverse. So it's got kind of a sci-fi background. But like most cool stories in sci-fi, things went horribly awry at some point. And because of that, we get the Valley people being removed from Purwin before it sank and essentially exiled to what was then the deepest, darkest wilderness where they could still be in the colony, but not be near anybody else in the colony, and left to live their lives alone. Things didn't quite work out the way they were supposed to in terms of the original goal was to improve the rate of reproduction that human beings had so that they could grow the colony. The genetic enhancements that they had made them naturally larger, unnaturally larger, stronger, and more rugged and durable for Calidor's harsh climates, which is why they can endure the high valleys of the Kulines without any serious problem. But there were a lot of bumps and twists and turns along the way, and that kind of twisted them from their already twisted origins into what they are now. And their cultural attitudes put themselves at the center of the universe. I will also say that there are Valley people supremacists, I guess you could say, and look down on all other humans as slightly inferior. It doesn't mean that they hate them or anything like that, but they just don't measure up to the high standards of the Valley folk.
You could say the same for the Alka.
It was the Alkalan, yeah. And we'll get a couple more glimpses, but again, it's the sort of thing where I don't want to give you too much because it'll spoil the reveal. And yeah, they do have a longer lifespan, around 120 years compared to humanity's 60 to 80. That was one of the things that their genetic enhancements helped with. They also have almost no cancer, cardiovascular disease, and their livers function at about twice the efficiency as a normal human liver, which is they do worship kind of jokingly Pram the Blessed, the god of distilleries. So there is that, but there's a reason that they drink, and they drink so hard. And once you that'll be a piece of world building that will be impressive if I can pull it off, and people don't hate me afterwards. But we'll see.
I have one. So I heard you talk a little bit about the Golden Goblin.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Just barely.
Okay, so I'll be the guy that asks the question then,
Are you
like
saying
past
that
episodes. Oh, my bad. I had her muted. Sorry.
So, in the Golden Goblin, are you saying that the wives will not be along for the trip?
That is correct. That is correct. And that's a point of contention from the very beginning of the book. As a matter of fact, I just wrote the prologue. And at this point in the story, the boys have been married for about 6 months or so. So the novelty hasn't worn off. And it will be an issue. And there may be a future short story or a novella about what happens while the boys are out of town. I've already been throwing around some ideas. But no, and one of the reasons they admit at one point to each other, yeah, this marriage thing is kind of hard. I'm kind of glad to get away for a while, just so I can. It's not that they don't love their wives, but they're starting to realize, oh, we have wives, okay, and it's becoming real to them, and it's not that they're second guessing their proposals or their marriages or anything like that. They're just starting to realize what kind of commitment they have invested themselves in. And also realize that sometimes the secret to a good marriage is to miss your wife more. And that means, of course, going away for a little while. I know, gosh darn it, my wife enjoys that every now and then when I give her a chance to miss me for a while. I think the boys are just getting to that point in their relationships where the novelty and the newness is worn off, and they're looking at the long haul. And this adventure is kind of a welcome chance for them to reflect while they go off and do something horrendously dangerous and borderline stupid. Yep, exactly.
And I had
Yeah.
one more question.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind.
Please.
And that is regarding Dara's book.
Uh-huh.
Dara's marital finale. I've read some of your more adult books.
Oh, thank you. Uh-huh.
And of course, I've read everything. Read it all. And so I'm just wondering how much of that
How explicit it is. It is somewhat explicit, but I handle it tastefully. I handle it in the manner of a traditional romance novel. Don't use a lot of dirty words, except in a couple of places, and they're not actually referring to the sex act itself, but just commenting on it. For example, there's a scene where Dara catches a glimpse of someone naked that she knows, and he's far more well endowed than she ever suspected. And that kind of sticks in her mind a little bit. Like, oh my God, I didn't know they came that big. That sort of thing. So it's a little raunchy, but it's not. She doesn't completely slut out or anything like that. I was very cautious. I wanted this to be something that I could, that my daughter or my mother-in-law could read, and I wouldn't feel bad about. And I've accomplished that. It's still sexy, according to my beta readers. When the moments of passion happen, they work. But I do it without using a lot of profanity, a lot of explicit terms. I'm more describing moods than I am activities and actions. There you go.
Okay, so more Heinlein-esque than Anne Roquelaire.
Oh yeah, definitely. Although I appreciate the merits of both of those authors. I also wanted.
No.
Calm down. I'm going back up.
Various liberal stuff. So
But
anyway,
I'm just gonna rest a
thank you
little
for
bit before work.
my question.
Hey, I was in the bathroom. I wanted my.
It's
I can't see
KT.
my cover.
I'm back.
I'm done. Thanks. Very
Okay,
much.
thank you so much for the question, and I'm glad you asked that. That was something that I was kind of. It was. I wanted to be careful about how I handled that. I know I've got readers who are easily offended or might not. It might feel that a more explicit treatment would be too much for the material. I think I struck a good balance between eroticism and tastefulness. No, right. Sexuality.
Well, I know you have quite a range, but Dara did start out as a YA.
Yes, and that's part of her issue that she struggles with throughout the entire book. Is she comes from a very conservative culture, sexually speaking. They're liberal in some ways, but very conservative as most rural cultures are about sexuality. Very practical about it, but still very conservative. And I will say that they're without spoiling it, there is a LGB character in it, and that was not put in there for gratuitousness, but because I wanted to basically expand Dara's perceptions of the world beyond her conservative culture a little bit, and make her understand that there's a lot different ways for different people to love each other, and gave her an example. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much, Longer.
I have a question for Terry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is kind of a twofold question. Who is your favorite character to write? And who is the hardest character for you to write?
Okay. Yeah, that's a big question, and I'll tell you why. Because there are characters that, in general, I like to write more than others, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're my. It's hard to explain. Let me back up and put it to you this way. Fun characters are great to write. Jonathan Rhys in Practical Adept was a hoot. Anytime Lorcas comes out, there's going to be fun. Caswell and the Fox, yes, of course. And characters like Azar. Also, they're characters that show up. They're big. They have intriguing perspectives. They have a way with words, and they are generally a lot of fun to write. But the characters that I enjoy writing the best are the characters that I can make the reader feel that they know the character, and then with one or two words, I open up an element or aspect of the character that you didn't realize was there before. And if I've constructed the character properly, then you'll look at them and go, oh, that's been there the whole time, and I just didn't realize it because I didn't have this one bit of information. And sometimes that takes several books to build up to that way. It's not any less satisfying to write that than it is to write one of the funnier characters, one of the characters with really good lines. And sometimes it can be very fulfilling from a writer's perspective. In particular, characters with a lot of wisdom and perspective are fun to write. I've been hanging out with a lot of old people recently. My 80-year-old neighbor, my mother-in-law. We are at that point in our lives where we're taking care of our elders a lot. I've always valued experienced voices to kind of provide grist for my creative mill. I steal some of my best stuff from older people. And so writing a character like Old Antime, or writing a character like
Zagor springs to mind.
Zagor is a great example. Min's dad, actually, Olmec, he doesn't have the age that some of the others do, but he has the wisdom. Ferndal. Well, thank you, and a lot of people gave me crap early in the series about how two-dimensional she was, and it wasn't that she was two-dimensional. It's just when you're walking around with the Avengers and you're the male guy, you don't have a lot that's going to distinguish you. She had one job for the first couple of books, and that was to get Menelin laid, and so there wasn't a lot of room for expansion of that until we got to Well, really, Spellmonger's honeymoon, I think, is where we start to see a little bit more of Alia, and then throughout the process of her injury and recovery. Yes, and then going to Foot Wizard, where we see her on equal footing for a change with Menelin. And those were all interesting elements and aspects of the character to do. But well, good. And then there are the other characters that are really fun to write are the villains, because you have your straight up villain like Shirul, who's just a psychopath, and that's fun to write because there's absolutely no hint of compromise there. And then you got your Korbal, and all of the Nima Vorti, who all have, are variations of the same evil bad guy. And that's great. Each one of them gives me an opportunity to really channel stuff that really should only be said to my therapist. I really enjoy those opportunities to wallow around in the pit of evil for a little bit and then leave it the hell alone, and be able to sleep at night. Although every now and then I'll have a dream about one of my books where I realize I've actually set something up even worse happening because of what I've written. I just had a dream about something like that recently. But those are kind of my favorite characters to write. Pentandra is a wonderful character to write. And she's difficult, but I get a lot of artistic enjoyment out of writing from her perspective, because she has a very clear sense of who she is, more so than Menelin does. And she's more self-assured about more things than Menelin is. And writing that can be very nuanced. Gatina, yes, Gatina's exceptional, and that's kind of how I always write her. Is that she is the exception to so many rules out of the gate that gives me a lot of freedom to write her as a character, because she can rationalize freaking anything once she sets her mind to doing it. And that's a fun kind of character to write, and more fun than writing Dara, honestly. I didn't mind getting around and wallowing in Dara's head for a bit. But in terms of overall enjoyment writing the character, Gatina's a little more fun. Yes. And that's the other thing. When you get characters like Tyndall and Rondell, writing that's I'm basically writing a buddy movie every time, and that's great. Because that's one of my what I think is one of the great art forms of film and literature is the buddy movie, buddy comedy. And it gives you a chance for a lot of interpersonal interaction that is very revealing to both characters, and the way that they change over time. Is one of the more fascinating things about writing them. But I just like character in general, and I will find a way to take, that nameless torchbearer over at the side that you saw back in book 2 and give him an elaborate backstory that may or may not end up in the book, but it's there for me and I know it's there. And when I have an opportunity to include somebody like that in the series, I usually, for example, in Talon and the Flame, there's a couple of cameos from characters we've seen in the past that pop up, and some of them are quite important, and they have backstories and they have reasons, and they just, they're perfectly good characters that you just haven't seen on screen because
you mentioned Roloff like twice in Spellmonger. That's it. And then 13 books later, bam, he's there in Angus Spell and as our guide. And when that happened, I had such whiplash. I was like, well, that name, why do we know that name? You had one other thing, and I promise I'll shut up. You said you had a dream, but I had a very bad accident and ended up in the hospital.
Sorry to hear.
The day after Foot Wizard dropped. So I have been listening to Foot Wizard over and over and over again for hours, immersed in the story. That as they rush me to the hospital and they've given me painkillers and I'm loopy. I'm calling all of the doctors Lalastian because that's just where my brain was. And they looked at me and like, what is this? Why do you keep calling us that? What is that word? So I had to give some trauma doctors the short story of the Spellmonger books, and
This is why my fans are my greatest marketing and merchandising arm. I have had so many people tell me stories about how one of their wacky friends, talked them into getting into the Spellmonger series because something about it they thought would appeal to that friend's sensibilities. And in some cases, it's spread over entire families, like a necromantic plague. And I'm really gratified by that. I'm happy. I went back and listened to a Tolkien interview not too long ago where he said his whole point in writing Lord of the Rings was to see if he could write a really long story that kept everybody engaged. And that's my goal for the Spellmonger series. And when I hear stories like that, I bet you one of those doctors is going to, go, oh, well, I got an Audible credit I'm not using, and start on the first. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple of hits like that. And everybody keeps going, we want to see you do it again. We want to see you do it again. And that's the thing about a Rickroll. You can only do it once. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, not just them in this book, in this most recent book. I had a minor character that I wasn't really planning on bringing back in any meaningful way. He was just kind of a guy at the bar, and then I had an idea about, well, you meet a guy at the bar, and stuff can happen sometimes, whether you really intend it to or not. And suddenly he becomes a fairly important character in the story. And that's the fun part. Honestly, the book didn't end up exactly the way I plotted it out, but I hit all the points I meant to hit, and getting where it ended, getting to the end was actually more fun, allowing for a little more organic growth of the characters. Like Alora came through a lot bigger than I thought she would in the book. And some characters that I expected to be big were not, like her father. And I kind of feel bad about that because I enjoy writing her father, but he really wasn't a huge part of this story. And as a matter of fact, we don't see him on. Right. Alora's family is dead. She's an orphan, but Dara's father, I figured, would play a more prominent role. But I found it more effective to keep him off stage so that he did not overshadow Dara and her sense of agency. So, and I think considering her age and experience and rank, that was appropriate. He's there, he talks to her, but he's not the most important voice in her ear. And I think there's a little sadness at that. But there's always been a little sadness in Dara's relationship with her father because she's the last gift that his wife gave to him before she died. Um, right. So they keep each other basically at arm's length, and that's a little problematic, I think, for them both from character perspectives. But that's what the story needed, and so that's what I did. Yes, please. Yeah.
Well, going back to the whole Valley people question, my curiosity is, what do the Valley people think of Yugi, since he's commonly known as the half-breed?
They treat him the same way that they treat all humanity, which is they're arrogant, and they'll talk to you. They'll talk to anybody, but it doesn't matter if you're a king or a peasant. If you're not a Valley person, you're just merely human. And so Yugi understands this in the very brief times that he's had to deal with the Valley people. He got his business done and got the hell out of there. It's difficult to penetrate into their culture deep enough to understand the way it works, but it's pretty easy to see straight up that they are not like other people. And
I would pay to see an argument between the Kilnusk and the Valley people. I'm just saying.
That would be tough because there are more Valley people than there are Kilnusk. But thankfully, they're probably not going to clash. But there will be at some point, I promise you, a tricycle charge on the battlefield. Oh yeah.
Will there be Queen music?
More than likely, yes. I've actually considered, and I hate to even think about this because I'm very wary of it, but I considered going to one of the musical AIs and having something done in the style of Queen to fill that. But yeah, there's the Orismology. Yeah. The Kilnusk, though, yeah, they're going to play a prominent role in things going forward. I'm not completely set up for Baltimore and Heroes, but I probably will be by the end of the month. Now that I'm done with this book, I'm taking a couple of days off to handle administrative issues. Those are on my list. I'm also open for spots in other cons. Heroes in Baltimore, I usually put up a full booth, but I probably won't do that for any place that's longer than easy driving distance, say 5 or 6 hours away from my home, simply because it's a lot of work to get a whole booth done. But I am available. My schedule is pretty much open for other con appearances. If you want me to come to your local con and sit on panels and stuff like that, love doing that. Absolutely love it. And if I can do that with set up a booth, all the better. And I can bring books to sign. I'm always happy to do that. And right. And that's the other thing. Right. I love appearing at cons, and if you're going to one and get to see me there, great. But if I'm in a city, I usually try to arrange a time where you can just do a casual meet and greet. It's usually in a bar or a pub or a hotel lobby or something like that, where you just come by, get a book signed, talk to me for a few minutes, ask me that burning question that you've always wanted to ask. Interacting with fans is like one of the best parts of this job, and getting everybody's perspectives and finding out what really attracts you to the series and the characters and that sort of thing is as much fun as anything else. So, and I found myself just as enthusiastic about all this stuff at this point. Going into book 18. Than as I was back in book 2 or 3. I'm just amazed at how intelligent and insightful and generous my fans are with their time and creative energy. It's very humbling, and it makes me want to do the absolute best work that I can for you. You may not realize it at the time. Realize it in retrospect when you read it. But by the time we get to the end of the series, I want you to be exhausted emotionally and mentally, and just want it to all start again so that you experience it for the first. No, it cannot. It is pressurized. It is pressurized, but it is only cleared about the highest it can go. It's rated for is about 25,000 feet. Gosh, Craig, that's a good question. Oh, I know, and they're all. I can answer answer them all with the same phrase, which is, yeah, just wait and see. It's coming. I've pulled things. Yeah, and yep, good.
So we actually do have a funny question from the chat going back. This is from R&D, if I'm saying the name correctly. Is Tiger K going to lead the strike charge with the llamas or something like that? I guess.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. I haven't plotted it out that specifically. And in that particular battle, he will be playing a very important role. But the Killnusk are basically going to be a cross between the Golden Horde and the Hell's Angels.
Nice.
And yeah, on tricycles. Tricycles with additional riders, like on a chariot, where you have someone standing on the back of a tricycle firing, while the driver is plowing ahead. The Killnusk really latch onto this, and even the Malkasalan and to a lesser extent the Dradrian really latch onto this nifty little simple piece of technology. With a kind of why didn't we think of that sort of enthusiasm, and we're going to see some great looking dwarven tricycles in the future.
Will we see Penny's boat in Sea Mage?
Probably not in Sea Mage. After Sea Mage will be Theurge. And then and we may start to see some more of that in Theurge. And then book 20 will be Archmage. And that is probably where we're going to see the Killnusk. They will finally have been able to settle down into a semi-permanent home, establish themselves, and start throwing their considerable weight around. And just like Necromancer, Archmage is going to be the capstone of the Decalogy, books 11 through 20. And I'm really saving some stuff for the really big cinematic stuff. I'm saving for Archmage. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. But that's about the time that we'll be returning our attention back to the Mage Law in a serious way. The problem with world building sometimes, though, is if you're really good at it, you build these great places, and there's a risk of leaving them and not coming back to them, and that's really frustrating for the reader. Which is one reason why Dara's book is going to take place mostly in Sevendor. So all the Sevendori folks out there will get some nice glimpses of what's going on in Sevendor these days. And we will be passing through Vanador and parts of the northwestern Wilderlands and the Golden Goblin. So that's more or less Tyndall and Rondell's home territory too, and we'll see kind of what's been happening there since the end of the war. Both of them are proceeding. My cartographer is working on the big map of the Five Duchies right now, and I'm very impressed with what he's done. And I have two separate artists that I've hired for illustrations for the game, and I just got back to one of them on a series of basically pictures of the seven dwarvish clans, and what their physical and their garb looks like, and their comparative statures and that sort of thing. He's going to do the same thing with the Alcalon, the Talalon, and Gervani, and so that kind of painstaking detail takes time, unfortunately, and he's busy. He's also really good. For the dwarves, I'm really going for a Jack Kirby sort of feel for them, and so he's nailing that really nicely. He right. Oh, sure. Well, when you're doing your maps originally, don't forget with Spellmonger, I was using like version 2 something of Microsoft Word and using the paint function to make my maps because that was back in the day. Actually, for Spellmonger, the original Spellmonger, I think I did the first version of that in 2009 and published it on Lulu.com first. So there's about 20 copies from Lulu.com with the really horrendous blue cover floating around out there. When I signed up with Kindle and transferred it over to Kindle, one of the terms and conditions on Kindle is if you want to be eligible for their KDP Select program, where you get paid for people who borrow the book and read it, then you can't offer it anywhere else in any other format. So, and I'm still winning awards based on the number of page turns I get because I write really, really big books. And with that many fans all getting on at once and reading, borrowing and reading that adds up to a substantial number. And that's been a nice little bonus. Right now, my daughter has the cover template, and that's her big. She got started with it for Christmas, and I think she's getting back to it now that the holiday is over, because she works in a frame shop, and the holidays are just crazy for a frame shop. But she's got Shadow Mage, the back cover right now, and that's really the last part that we're waiting for. I was hoping to get it done before Christmas. Things just didn't work out as usual. I've got too many plates spinning at once, and I can yell and scream at her to get it done faster, but she's my little girl and she'll cry, and that's just going to kill me. So it may. I'm going to have to work closely with Amazon and maybe even call Podium in to see if they can give me some advice. Their production team can give me some advice. Basically, Necromancer is about 450,000 words long, and that exceeds the maximum number of pages that you can do with the bindings that the Kindle print-on-demand service allows you. You can get about 830 pages in of a book, but I'm struggling with that with stuff that's 225, 250,000 words right now. I'm playing around with font sizes and stuff. I've been lucky so far, but Necromancer is clearly going to violate that. So I'm going to have to find another avenue, or get Amazon to work with me and find another way. I'd really desperately like to get all 10 of the first Ecology done by this year, and I include in that the anthology too. I'd love to have a box set ready to go by next Christmas.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
And we've got a question in the chat for you, Terry.
Lay it on me.
Will we see the Leshy working with the alchemists in Sevendor or Vanador? Love your work, Terry, from Fishkin.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. They're going to stick in Vanador, with very few exceptions. They're just learning about magic. They have been living up in the realm of the Jevelar for thousands of years now, and learning how to deal. Other Mexicans across the planet deal with magic all the time, but the Leshy in particular have been in the Jevelar and have adapted themselves over time to that. And so coming into the regular magical world, it's going to take them a little while to get the roots, I guess you could say, before they feel comfortable moving around. And there were reasons why the human colony was put purposefully kind of far away from any of the heavy concentrations of the Mexicanza. And it's just that the two races are not completely compatible on certain things. If you look at it from the Mexicanza perspective, when you're walking through a human town, you're basically seeing houses built with the bones of your of your relatives, and just like dragons seeing humans dressed in dragon scale armor, that's a little disconcerting. But it gives you perspective about, for example, the Gurvani human bones as art objects and installations. So I think there's a little hesitancy there, but we'll see the Leshy a little bit more in the future.
There has to be a single Leshy merchant in Vanador operating his own tavern. That'd be great.
That would be interesting. That would be very interesting, and I think we'll see that sort of thing. We'll see. I can foresee kind of not a tavern, but like
considering what you just said.
But I could see the Leshy, having a little grove off to the side in Vanador where you could drop by and, have a nice beverage and talk with the Leshy, talk with the Lesh there, probably over by the Kasari, because the Kasari at least have a strong reverence for trees that most of the other, most of other humanity does not share. So.
Oh, I actually just see something in chat now. It's very interesting about Olmec potentially interacting with the Leshy and how that'd go.
Oh, yeah, there will be an interaction like that in the future. I've already been thinking about it and just how that would go about. And of course, yeah, Olmec is actually based on a friend of my father's who was worked with him in sedimentation and erosion control, but he loved trees in general and loved forestry. And so making that connection is going to be very easy. Kinda. I think Olmec smokes more weed than Mr. Green Jeans. Honestly, he's all about the herbs. That's all I can say. All right, next question.
Moon's for sure going to apprentice Minolin, or is he going to go to the new academy and his fellowship will be done with him since he's got a lot coming up?
I think it's going to be a mixture of both. One of the things that Dara and Minolin actually discuss in Talon and the Flame, and it comes up a couple of different times, is how was Dara's experience as a apprentice compared to Allura's experience as a kind of an apprentice and a student, because Allura is in the story because she's back in Sevendor taking remedial classes or special classes from Master Thenradel. And so the whole kind of future of magical education is talked about, and they're kind of figuring their way out. I think for Minolin's kids, by necessity, they're going to have to be technically apprenticed, but also heavily educated in the academy. And it all depends on what their individual talents are yet. And honestly, I haven't figured that out. So we may get a couple of wild sport talents. We'll definitely have at least one child that is not talented.
Are we going to have a magical baker? Because that would make Min's dad so happy.
Oh, I'm sure it would. And it's funny because Larisk, actually Min's newest apprentice and nephew, he, despite the fact that he's the son of a baker and the grandson of a baker, he finds baking boring. He loves cooking in general, but baking itself is just boring. I guess, when you had to make 500 hand-rolled buns when you're 12 years old every day because that's your job in the bakery. yeah, I can see where he might get bored with baking per se, and be more intrigued by cooking in general. But we're going to see basically I'd like to do a short story at some point set in the bakery. I just have to find the right character and because I love bakeries, I really do. The smell of baking bread is up there with the smell of roasting coffee. Some of the most enchanting and intoxicating smells I think are available on the planet.
Bakeries.
Mm. Oh yeah. Uh huh. Spoilers. Spoilers, Craig.
Yeah.
Well, we'll discuss it offline. But yeah.
So, next question from chat. How about that?